some of the most potent anti-aging foods are actually spices. And it's actually the flavor compounds that are responsible for the effects. So, for example, the gingerols in ginger are which is responsible for the kind of gingery bite, is the reason we think that ginger is so effective, for example, improving symptoms of osteoarthritis of the knees, the leading cause of physical disability among older adults. I go through turmeric and black cumin and papali and all these, go through this long list of spices that have found to have these remarkable effects, even in randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trials, which are hard to do with food. You can do it with pills, because you can make a pill and a sugar pill that looks identical.
So for all my listeners out there who've got a bum knee or they've got pain in their hip or whatever, try this out before you get a knee replacement or a hip replacement.
Exactly.
You'll find that the inflammation will go down. And on top of that, obviously, we know that doing exercise, or at least going to a yoga class or Tai Chi class and getting movement, is going to help that. So the cookbook isn't just about what to add, it's also about what to avoid. Welcome to Inside Personal Growth Podcast. Deep dive with us as we unlock the secrets to personal development, empowering you to thrive. Here, growth isn't just a goal, it's a journey. Tune in, transform, and take your life to the next level by listening to just one of our podcasts. Well, welcome back to Inside Personal Growth. Many of you know this young man on the other side of the screen here. His name is Dr. Michael Greger, and he is known for, really, to be honest with you, much of what he's done is groundbreaking work in his book series, How Not to Die. And we're going to be talking to him, How Not to Die Cookbook. Do you want to hold a copy of that book up, please, Dr. Greger?
Yes, the How Not to Age Cookbook, How Not to Die Now, and its 10th anniversary edition coming out December 2025. But here's the How Not to Age Cookbook, which just came out today.
It did fantastic, and we're happy to have you on the show and to speak about that. And I think many of our individuals who listen to the show know about your nutritional facts website, which we will have a link to as well. And that website is just loaded for all of you who have not been to that. But I'm going to let them know a second about you, Dr. Greger. He's a founding member and the fellow of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, a physician and an internationally recognized speaker on nutrition. His science-based nonprofit, nutritionfacts.org, offers free online portal hosting for more than 2,000 videos and articles and a myriad of health topics. Dr. Greger is a sought-after lecturer. He has presented at the Conference on World Affairs, the World Bank, testified before Congress, and was invited as an expert witness in Oprah Winfrey's defense in the infamous meat defamation trial. A graduate of Cornell University School of Agriculture and Tufts University School of Medicine, Dr. Greger is also acclaimed author of How Not to Die, How Not to Die Cookbook, it says, and How Not to Diet. And so just go to his website. You can learn more about him there. So with that, further ado, this cookbook is what we're here, How Not to Age Cookbook. So I know you've written all these other books. You've been on Oprah. You've been everywhere. You're world acclaimed. And it's so awesome having you on. What inspired you to create this cookbook specifically on aging, and how does it build really on kind of your earlier works, How Not to Die and How Not to Age? Well, How Not to Age Cookbook, but How Not to Age.
Well, so I identified a number of foods in How Not to Age, associated with longevity and benefits for preserving certain organ systems. But there's a difference between saying, okay, here's a list of foods you should incorporate in your diet, and actually incorporating those foods in your diet. How do you make them delicious? How do you make them convenient? How do you actually make them into a meal plan? I didn't want it to just be a reference book. I wanted it to be kind of a day-to-day grocery store, style practical guide in terms of incorporating some of these healthy foods into your diet. So that is where the How Not to Age cookbook came into being.
So, look, some people here listening are vegan, vegetarian, some of them are not. And you're kind of known for vegetarianism and leaning more toward what I would call a plant-based diet. What are some of the most common misconceptions people have about food, and in particular, the food they eat and their aging process?
Oh my God. Well, I certainly I had a lot of surprises myself going into this book. People don't realize that, I learn as much writing it as anyone does reading it. It's not like I was taught any of this in medical school. And, there were some real surprises to me going into it. I think people will find my chapter on exercise surprising, on sleep, red wine, resveratrol, NAD supplements, vitamin D, fish, protein restriction, microRNAs. The list goes on and on. I mean, it's just constantly going in with some presuppositions of what I thought I'd find and coming out with a very different story. But that's how you do good science. You don't let your theories stem from the evidence, not the other way around.
Well, look, people today with the supplements that are available, as you said, resveratrol, I take that, CoQ10, I take that. I take a whole handful of supplements, but the key is to get the nutrients out of the food if we can. And you emphasize food as medicine. What ingredients in the cookbook are your all stars when it really comes to slowing this biological age? And you and I were talking about Dan Buettner and the blue zones. I mean, if you look at the National Geographic special, you look at his cookbook, you look at what people eat in different geographical regions of the world that have given them longevity, and that's what we're really talking about here, and how not to age and longevity. What are some of the ones that you found that you think are the easiest for people to put in their diet to slow this biological aging process?
Yeah, we owe a tremendous debt to Buettner's team for the Blue Zones Foundation work to identify these areas of extraordinary longevity around the world and doing more than 100 dietary surveys to find exactly what they are eating. And a few particular foods pop out. Legumes. So beans, split peas, chickpeas, and lentils, every single blue zone described in history has centered their diet as the primary protein source, as some sort of legume. And in fact, the Gold Burden of Disease study, which is the largest systemic analysis of risk factors in human history, found that number one cause of death in the United States is indeed the American diet, bumping tobacco to number two. Cigarettes only kill about 500,000 Americans every year, whereas our diet kills many more. And the five worst things about their diet that they identified, number one on the list, the worst thing about the American diet is inadequate legume consumption, not eating enough legumes like beans. Number two is not eating enough whole grains. Number three, not eating enough nuts. So three out of the top five are things we're actually not getting enough of. Number four, too much meat. Number five, too much soda. But just to pull out some of those, the nuts, for example, on a gram per gram basis, compared to any other food group, consumption of nuts is associated with the lowest risk of premature death. I recommend a palm full of nuts every day. That's a single ounce, maybe enough to offer maximal benefit. You don't seem to get more eating more nuts. You don't want to eat too many, more than a cup a day. It may risk the kidney stones because the
So any particular nut? We talking cashews?
yeah.
We
So
talking
walnuts,
almonds? Are we talking
yeah.
walnuts? Are we talking? I mean,
Well,
well, there's a lot of nuts our
there are
listeners could buy.
There are a lot of nuts. So coconuts don't count. Chestnuts don't count. They're nutritionally very kind of different foods. And unfortunately, peanut butter consumption does not appear to have the same salutary effects. So we're talking about tree nuts, in particular walnuts. Really, maybe the healthiest.
Well,
Not only they have the highest omega-3 content, but they're the only nut that has been found to acutely improve endothelial function, basically artery function. So I encourage people to eat a palmful of walnuts, ideally raw, unsalted walnuts, every day. So that
how do you make them tasty, Dr. Grieger? I know for me, almonds are easy. I'll tell you the nut I like the most is cashews.
ah,
And I'm curious on walnuts because yeah, you can buy a bag of walnuts, it's true, but it's probably not the first thing that people think about. They either go for the almonds or the cashews probably, and the unsalted cashews, but is there some trick to because I find them sometimes a little dry, a little bit harder to kind of, how do I want to say, not digest, but any tricks you have?
well, so you want to be getting English walnuts, not black walnuts. Typically, what you find in the store is English walnuts. Black walnuts can be a little bitter. You want to get them fresh. Again, maybe you've just had some kind of old stale ones. You can use walnuts like you would use cashews to make some nice creamy sauces. So, it's kind of pesto season, it's springtime.
Mm.
And so a nice walnut pesto. So when you blend it up, either in a smoothie or making some kind of sauce, it gives this really nice richness if you just don't happen to, want to just kind of
Eat,
eat them
eat
the way
walnuts.
they are.
Take a
I
handful.
throw them in my oatmeal, but
There you go. Oatmeal with raisins and walnuts.
that sounds bad to me. But look, whatever nut you're willing to eat is the nut you should eat. But if you really, had to pick one out, if you're on a desert island and could choose one nut, walnuts would probably be it. But we want to encourage people to add nuts to their daily diet.
Okay, so look, a lot of this is all about inflammation because we know that inflammation's an issue, oxidative stress. Can you explain the science behind how certain foods interact with reduction of inflammation? So, people who get arthritis, inflammation, right? And this telomere length, in other words, the length of the telomere and the oxidative stress. So, could you kind of give a little bit of the science, but even more importantly, it's like, so what are the foods that are going to have an effect on this telomere length, the oxidative stress, and the inflammation?
You got it. Aging can be thought of in part as an inflammatory disease. A single blood test for inflammatory markers such as C reactive protein can predict future physical and cognitive performance as well as remaining lifespan in elderly individuals. Thankfully, excess inflammation can be extinguished through changes in diet. So I encourage people on a daily basis to reduce their dietary and endogenous exposure to inflammatory AGEs. These are advanced glycation end products, also known as glycotoxins. One of the reasons we prefer raw nuts as opposed to toasted or roasted nuts is because high dry heat exposure to protein-rich foods can cause the formation of these toxins. So that's why, so for example, meat, better to steam, boil, use moist methods of heating for meat rather than grilling and frying and baking, just to keep the temperature to a point where you don't get excess production of these pro-inflammatory compounds. Boosting autophagy, which is this kind of self-cleaning process, can help clear out some of the inflammatory cellular debris that builds up. And you can improve autophagy by eating spermidine-rich foods, which is found in wheat germ and soy foods and mangoes and the whole autophagy chapter. Applying an emollient skin lotion, interestingly, can actually reduce inflammation. Our skin barrier actually breaks down as we get older. And there's been trials where you randomize people to just an emollient skin lotion, and you can actually decrease inflammation by kind of bolstering your
And are you
functioning skin.
pardon me, but are you saying a skin lotion that has like vitamin E in it, or
It just has to have. It's just some emulsion of oil and water, so it can just be
okay?
whatever cheap. It doesn't have to have any special ingredients. It's that it's adding that extra oily layer to basically to protect you from environmental contaminants from
Well,
breaking through the skin barrier.
I love that one because for those who are listening can see, they can't see very well. On the right side of my face, I just had 40 stitches and squamous cell cancer removed, but the hole got so big they had to put a flap down over it. So
Oh no!
here's the
Yeah.
point. I think having that lotion on and using, I don't know where you are with the use of sunscreen, but definitely a hat. As you get older, your skin, I'm 70, I'm going to be 71 in July. What happens is your skin is thinner. There's a challenge. Obviously, you being a doctor, you know this, but they say you did the damage when you were a kid. So, for all the kids listening, put sunscreen on. So, look, one of the big things is people in this day and age, everything's moving so fast. Listeners struggle with daily meal planning, right? It's like, okay, is it the husband or wife that's cooking? The question is, what's the meal plan? And how does this cookbook make longevity friendly eating approachable, sustainable, and put it in some kind of meal plan where we can say, well, on Monday we're going to have this, on Tuesday we're going to have this, and actually make it happen?
That's something that the publisher really pushed me to do. It's like, okay, well, let's form a meal plan. Take these recipes, and I was thinking, well, wait a second. What if you don't like these recipes? Like, I mean, it just seems weird to me. I'm like, so look, here's all the breakfast recipes. Pick one. Find a few you like and go through a rotation. What do you have in the house? What's on sale? What's in season? Like, I don't know. The meal plan was that never made that never made much sense to me. I guess some people just like to be kind of told what to do, but do uh, there's all sorts of healthy foods that can be combined in all sorts of healthy ways.
I'd agree with you, but I do know that I don't do the meal planning in my house, right? So the reality is that it's my wife that does that. So it's always, I think sometimes for some people, I don't know what I'm having from one night to the next,
Uh-huh,
to be
uh-huh.
honest with you. Bring it on me. What is it that we're having?
So I do a lot of batch cooking. So, on a weekend day when I have some time, I'll make a big load of beans or whole grains or things that I can kind of use throughout the week. And you can freeze in individual portions. I'm a big fan of, chopped vegetables. You can get bags of pre-washed, pre-chopped greens. Anything that kind of saves you time at that last stage. Frozen berries. If you look at my freezer, it's half frozen greens, half frozen berries. So then you don't have to worry about seasonality. You don't have to worry about getting to the store. You can get nice fresh produce kind of
All you gotta worry about is freezer burn.
well, yeah, no, you do have to keep it airtight. But
Well,
sometimes
but you gotta keep rotating it is what I meant to say. It's like that guy.
keep eating it.
That's right,
Exactly.
that's
Healthy
right.
food. You're right,
So
right, right. If
so
it's getting freezer burnt, you're not eating enough.
that's correct. So you need to have it going through the freezer and out into your smoothies or whatever. And
Exactly.
that brings me to this question, this how not to age cookbook. One of the things that I do every morning is celery and carrots, and I'm sure thousands of my listeners, it's like, okay, I have that routine too. And then I put in spinach, and
Right.
then I put in a scoop of protein powder,
Okay.
which is Orgain, and then I put in almond milk, right? And then some people tell you, well, you shouldn't do that way. And I'm like, well, wait a second. I'm getting a lot of greens. I'm getting celery. I'm getting carrots. I'm getting spinach. I'm getting I'm getting and a half a banana. So I think that the key is they don't want you putting in the half of the banana because it's got too much sugar in it. Do you have any secret on smoothies? Because so many people out there today are consuming smoothies for breakfast.
As they should, particularly as the weather warms up. What a convenient way, to kind of eat breakfast on the go. And the way you described is the way to do it. We want to be blending up vegetables, right? And so when you so the study showing that you can dramatically increase the bioavailability of some of these brain and eyesight important nutrients in dark green leafy vegetables when you blend up the greens. Just chopping the greens improves things. Mincing the greens is better, but then actually blending the greens like you get in something like a pesto or a smoothie it dramatically breaks open all those cell walls and it dramatically increases the bioavailability of these carotenoids like lutein, important for eye health. And so, yes, blending greens. So these green smoothies, what a fantastic way to do it. And you can cut down the bitterness of the greens by adding something like mango or banana
Or half an apple.
potato. Absolutely. Oh, I mean, that's a fantastic way to get stuff your face with as many fruits and vegetables as possible. I'm all in favor.
That perfect. And I bet you got some kind of recipe in the book.
We
for
do.
good
We
smoothie.
we do have some smoothie recipes. I like to add some ground flaxseed to make it kind of a nice milkshakey thickness. And add the extra omega-3s and the Kansas.
And how about chia seeds? Are you a big fan of those too?
Seeds are great too. Unfortunately, to fully absorb what's in them, you need to grind them up. Now, I guess if you have a really good blender, that might work. But unless you're chewing really well, you may want to get pre-ground chia seeds or grind them yourself.
Now that's a really good point because I don't think people really realize that pre-ground chia seeds are out there. But
It just kind of otherwise, it just kind of goes through you.
Right.
Now, it can help with kind of regularity, just a massive gelled chia seeds. But if you actually want to get at the omega-3s and the good stuff that's in the chia seed, you may actually not get that good nutrition unless it's ground up.
I think the flaxseed is a good idea. Now, look, what is your go-to meal from the book when you're short on time but want a longevity boost? In other words, if you were to say, hey, it's a go-to meal, our listeners out there today, hey, I'm going to go buy this cookbook. Give them a hint on some of these go-to quick, short meals that they could put together and are nutritious and good for them and also going to extend their longevity.
Well, it doesn't have to be. I mean, there are some recipes in the book that are a little more involved, maybe say for holidays. But I mean, it can be as quick as taking a purple sweet potato, throwing it in the microwave, and literally, eating it as you run out the door. You'll see me on airplanes with my sweet potato, eating my sweet potato. So I mean, it doesn't have to be really involved, but in terms of for breakfast, depending on what people like, for breakfast, in the cookbook, there's a lot of savory options like breakfast burritos, egg-free frittatas. Sweet options like baked carrot cake oatmeal and millet brunch cake with strawberries. For lunch, a lot of soup salad sandwich options like oyster mushroom chowder or Thai purple cabbage slaw, cheese-free quesadillas, lots of creamy pasta dishes. It's very international. There are jambalayas, Indonesian satays, risotto, shepherd pie. Most of the desserts are kind of berry based, so a lot of tarts and crumbles. Not only is every recipe in the cookbook healthy, but every ingredient of every recipe is healthy. So wait a second, how do you make something salty without salt or sweet without sugar? Well, those are some of the challenges we face going through it, and I'm really proud of how it all came out.
Well, it was obviously you and a team of people. You didn't all do this on your own. So
True.
congratulations to your team for helping you put all these recipes together. Can you hold the book up again? I want my listeners to be able to see it. I mean, here we are talking about this wonderful book.
And it's real, it's beautiful. It's really laid out very
Look
nice.
at that. It's really nicely
great.
done. And I love the
Beautiful.
pictures. The pictures are really good. So yes, that is it.
Yeah, it must have taken forever to do all that photography, but it really came out well.
Well, it did it. And it looks like it's a paperback book. It's not a hardback.
No, it is. It is actually hardback.
It is. Oh, well, that's
Mm.
good. I think that's good as well because most people like to put hardback books on their shelves for their cookbooks. So, how do you address this myth that healthy aging food, which I think many listeners think about, is bland or boring? Because obviously your cookbook proves it differently that it's not bland and boring. What would you tell listeners out there like, no, I don't want this. I'm going to keep my regular diet.
Well, it's interesting. Some of the most potent anti-aging foods are actually spices, and it's actually the flavor compounds that add that are responsible for the effects. So, for example, the gingerols in ginger are which is responsible for the kind of gingery bite. Is the reason we think that the ginger is so effective, for example, improving symptoms of osteoarthritis in the knees, the leading cause of physical disability among older adults. I go through turmeric and black cumin and papali and all these, go through this long list of spices that have found to have these remarkable effects, even in randomized double blind placebo controlled trials, which are hard to do with food. You can do it with pills because you can make a pill and a sugar pill that looks identical. Well, spices are so potent, you could, pack a whole eighth of a teaspoon of spice into a capsule, match it against a placebo capsule, and actually prove that, for example, garlic powder can reduce your LDL cholesterol, the primary driver of our number one killer of men and women heart disease, or that, a single teaspoon of ground raw black sesame seed powder can decrease your systolic blood pressure by 8 points. That alone decreases your risk of a stroke by about 26%. I mean, so there's just single foods proven, fenugreek, boosts your testosterone. Fennel seeds can help with menopausal hot flashes.
And all this is at your website, right? I mean, people
Yeah.
can go to nutritionfacts.org and they can get this. You did say something really interesting, though. You said that ginger was good for people with osteoarthritis. Is that what I heard you say?
Yes, there's been 4 foods that have been shown in clinical trials, controlled clinical trials, to improve osteoarthritis. Strawberries, rose hips, which are like the fruit of the rose bush, ginger, and turmeric.
Turmeric. So all of those are good for osteoarthritis. So for all my listeners out there who've got a bum knee or they've got pain in their hip or whatever, try this out before you get a knee replacement or a hip replacement.
Exactly.
Find that the inflammation will go down. And on top of that, obviously, we know that doing exercise or at least going to a yoga class or Tai Chi class and getting movement is going to help that. So the cookbook isn't just about what to add, it's also about what to avoid. What aging accelerating foods should people be cutting back on that potentially the listeners that are listening right now are eating?
Well, so if there were just 3 things I would add to someone's diet, first add, it would be berries, the healthiest fruits, dark green leafy vegetables, the healthiest vegetables, and then legumes, the healthiest source of protein, these beans, split peas, chickpeas, lentils. If there were just 3 things I would first remove from someone's diet, it'd be number 1, anything with trans fats, these partially hydrogenated vegetable oils. Number 2 would be processed meat, bacon, ham, hot dogs, lunch meat, sausage, known to contribute to colorectal cancer, which is the number 1 cancer killer among non-smokers. And number 3 would be liquid candy, sugar-sweetened beverages like soda. If you just got rid of those 3 and just added those 3 foods, you would go a long way towards improving your health.
Wow, great advice from you. Thank you so much. I think that'll help a lot of people. Hopefully, they'll listen to it and read the transcript as well. Are there any surprising foods or techniques in the book that made even you go kind of, whoa, that's a game changer?
Oh, well, so it was these individual foods. I mean, I assumed, look, if you're eating healthier, you're going to do better. I mean, but instead of, oh, just eat a healthy diet, I found these specific foods with specific effects, proven in these randomized controlled trials. So we talked about osteoarthritis. For enlarged prostate, a lot of people take this herb saw palmetto. It's found to absolutely flop in randomized controlled trials. But what does work? Flax seeds, pumpkin seeds, and cranberries. Cranberries have also been shown to help with overactive bladder syndrome. Pumpkin seeds, along with soy foods and chili peppers, have been shown to protect against hair loss. Along with topically, you can use a diluted rosemary essential oil. Appears to work as well as the drug Rogaine for keeping your hair, which I would have known.
So you forgot to take
I
those.
wish I would. Well, I just prefer. Unfortunately, it was too late for me. But don't make the same mistake.
That's
So talked
okay.
about fennel seeds for the menopausal hot flashes. Fenugreek for boosting testosterone. Plain white button mushrooms can help with the help combat the distinctive body odor of the elderly, something I didn't even know existed. But that was an interesting finding. Nitrate-rich vegetables like beets can help maintain muscle mass and performance. Broccoli family vegetables and garlic can boost immune function.
What do
Greens,
you
yeah.
think, pardon me, but what do you think about these beets that they're now selling in tablets to reduce blood pressure?
Oh,
You
night,
see a lot of this.
yeah,
They're gummies. They're now selling
yeah,
gummies that you
yeah.
can chew, gummies that are made out of beets. And, it seems like the real thing would be a lot better, although
You
they're a
get a
lot.
can of beets. You get
Yeah.
a can of beets. It would take you literally 30 seconds to open up the can and you stick a fork in it. Right. And both the dark green leafy vegetables and beets, both concentrated sources. So 90 minutes before your 5K or whatever can significantly improve athletic performance by improving the ability of your little mitochondria, the power plants within your cells, to extract energy from oxygen, something never before shown and can be done with just vegetable nitrates. So yeah, that's and can help improve muscle mass as well. Greens and berries are the best foods for your brain and vision. And though sun protection is the single most important thing you can do to slow skin aging, honeybush tea, almonds, and cocoa powder have been shown to reduce wrinkles.
Honey bush tea.
Honeybush,
Honey
honeybush
bush
tea.
tea.
That's a
That's
South African
amazing.
herbal tea. Yeah.
I'll have to, and I think I have some of that.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Look, you've obviously dedicated your life to this work, studying nutrition. You've got this nonprofit, nutritionfacts.org. All the proceeds to your book go to charity and have. And I want to just compliment you on that. Um, and you've written extensively on nutrition. You've been in so many documentaries and so many different documentaries that I've seen. How does the cookbook reflect what you've kind of personally learned and professionally implemented in recent years? So, I mean, you've been at this for how many years now?
So Nutrition Facts started in 2011. How Not to Die first came out in 2015. The 10th anniversary edition is coming out this December.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a minute.
It's been more than a minute, and the question, you had hair when you started, and you don't
I
have it
certainly
now.
did. Yes.
I saw pictures of you.
Yeah.
So the question I have for you really is, of the new findings that I mean, look, you're always on the hunt. You're a curious guy.
Right.
You're looking for things all the time. What did you incorporate into this cookbook that our listeners are going to be able to, and viewers are going to be able to take out of it?
Yeah, well, there's a lot. Certainly, it changed what I was eating. I mean, I'm always thinking I'm eating healthy and trying to, to tweak my diet. But I changed a lot. So, for example, I added strawberries to my diet, which is the most concentrated dietary source of a compound called fisetin, which we think is a senolytic compound, anti-senolytic compound, which is basically to remove the so-called inflammatory zombie cells within the body. I've added cardamom to my diet, wheat germ for the spermidine, the most
Germ.
concentrated source of wheat of spermidine, which boosts autophagy. In fact, it is of all the longevity compounds ever discovered among the small subset with the fewest side effects. Spermidine has the longest documented lifespan extension, found concentrated in wheat germ. So it's something I've never even
What do you put
considered
the
before.
wheat germ in? Do you put it
So
in?
what I do, so it's pretty bland and tasteless. So I find I can just sprinkle it on things. So I want to add ground flax seeds to things. I want to add wheat germ. So I basically make a powder contained of all the kind of bland things, and then I just sprinkle it on anything. So I can sprinkle on something savory, sprinkle on something sweet. And I just don't. It just doesn't bother me. I don't mind it.
Right.
I mean, sometimes it can be a little binding and make things a little thicker. So maybe
Right.
not great for kind of soups. But yeah. So, but I mean, I can sprinkle it on. But you can, I don't know, you could put in your smoothie.
Well, I was using wheat germ, and I don't know why I stopped, but now that you reminded me,
Yeah, yeah. Go for it.
anti-aging supplement, I got to go back. So, Look, it's packed solid. Look, if our listeners want to go to nutritionfacts.org, there's videos, there's research papers, there's a plethora of information there. And this book, which now you can get, it's released, it's out there on Amazon. So I'm going to have a link for them to be able to go buy this book. So look, for anybody now that's over 50 and they're listening to this show, and just how changing their eating habits, you know, is it kind of too late once they've reached 50, or is it never too late?
It is never too late. The good news is that we have tremendous power over our health, destiny, and longevity, and that the vast majority of premature death and disability is preventable with a healthy and often diet and lifestyle. And one need not make drastic changes. It's not all or nothing. Even just basic, common sense lifestyle factors can mean living literally a decade longer. Not smoking, not being obese, regular exercise, more fruits and vegetables. And it's never too late. Never too late to stop smoking, to start moving more, to start eating healthier. We really do have the power.
So look, we live in a multi-generational situation these days. We've got a crew crossing all kinds of generations, like my grandchildren, my children. Um, so how could the cookbook serve as kind of a bridge for families, especially across generations, to connect over healthy food? Because it's like, okay, hey, somebody's vegetarian. Oh no, you got to make a veggie burger. Or you got somebody who's got dietary and they're gluten free, and we got to do that. This book would be something that a man or a woman could pick up, go to the kitchen, and actually make a multitude of foods to be able to cross these generational and dietary restrictions. Correct?
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. People ask me all the time, how can I get my kids to eat healthier, right? How can I get my kids to eat vegetables, etc. And if you look at the literature, if you look at the evidence base, the single most important factor in getting kids to eat healthy is role modeling healthy behavior, right? You can't be do as I say, not as I do. The most important way to get our kids to eat healthy is to eat healthy ourselves. And so this is a great way to do it. And then there's the social benefits. I talk about, these blue zones. It's not just about healthy diets. It's also about social factors and exercise and sleep and stress reduction, etc. Getting people around the table. Everyone's kind of lost in their screens these days. Bringing people together to have a meal has an extra important social component, which keeps people, kind of on the straight and narrow. Whereas if people are off to, fend for themselves in some takeout or some drive-through, I'm afraid they're just not going to be eating as healthfully.
That is a really important point. I'm reflecting on the fact that my wife's been in Spain for 11 days and comes back tonight. And I really made it a point, and for my listeners, I only ate 2 meals out in 11 days, and the rest of the time I literally cooked in.
Oh,
Right?
great.
And that's pretty unusual because I'm not the cook in the house, but the reality is I forced myself. And I found myself using the little chopper machine to make chopped up lettuce and tomatoes and all these kind of things
Right?
in a big salad, right?
Wonderful.
And that's what I was eating for dinner, right? And I think when you do it, you really realize it doesn't take that long. It's easy to do, and the reality is it's healthy for you. Now, if there's one takeaway that you hope that the readers, and the listeners, and the viewers, because this is on YouTube as well, are going to walk away from with the How Not to Age cookbook, because this is all about longevity. It's not How Not to Die cookbook,
Right.
it's How Not to Age cookbook. What is it that you'd want them to know? What is it that you'd want them to walk away with here, Dr. Greger, and any references for them beyond the cookbook, maybe?
Well, the important thing, look, it's your body, your choice. If you want to smoke cigarettes, go bungee jumping, not wear your seatbelt, disconnect your smoke alarms, right? It's up to each of us to make our own decisions as to what to eat and how to live, but we should make these choices consciously, educating ourselves about the predictable consequences of our actions. And so that's my role. That's what I feel the role of all doctors should be, is like, look, someone in your circumstance who continues to do X, Y, and Z, these are the predictable consequences. Here's the alternatives. You could also do this, and this is what would result. And then it's really up to the individual. And so I just wanted to give people kind of this portfolio of options of, preserving your, skin and your joints and your sex life and your, vision, your cognition, and on down the list. Something in your, family. There's, people have been hard of hearing or whatever. What can you do to preserve your inner ear? Just to, the concern is that it's a little overwhelming, right? I want it to be as comprehensive as possible. But the flip side of that is it's just so much material. But I encourage people, look, take it piecemeal, find out what fits in your life, what doesn't. Take a step back. In fact, that's the conclusion of the book, where I say, okay, let's go back to the basics here. Again, a decade of life is just super the basic stuff. Then yes, you want to tweak around the edges, you want to get some more here and there. Oh my God, I got tons of stuff people can do, but let's not forget about the real important basics. I can imagine someone, looking through and taking some new fancy supplement while they're puffing a cigarette or something. It's like, no, let's do the basic stuff first. And then, yes, for all you longevity geeks out there, there's all sorts of cool things you can do. But let's not lose sight of some of the most important things. And that's really, 85% of the way there is just really the basic stuff.
Now, because I don't have the book itself, I do have the PDF that Martha sent. My issue is how much of the book is more of a narrative versus actual recipes. In other words, you speaking to the reader about, okay, here's some things you should do. Because I think a lot of people, when they buy a book and they think it's just a cookbook, I think what you're trying to tell me right now is this is not just a cookbook.
Yeah, so it's about an eighth. So the first 25 pages is the narrative, where I go through, talk about the key highlights in How Not to Age. How Not to Age was just this massive tome, 13,000 references. And it's just like, okay, let's dumb it way down. Let's do all the basics. So I go through, talk about the anti-aging, etc. And then the other 200 pages then I go into is really going into the recipes. Again, trying to make it practical, make it doable. It's one thing to tell people to eat these foods; it's another thing to make them lick their lips over it.
Well, so here's the deal. You've got a new second edition, How Not to Die, which I love the book, although it was 400 pages, whatever. It's a pretty thick book, right? It's like this. And many people aren't going to read through all that. This new one that's coming out in December, you said, um, is this book with all the new findings that you have in it?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's even bigger.
It's even bigger. It's
Hey, but look, there's a whole decade of amazing new findings. But look, it's also going to be on audiobook. I'll record it. It takes me about 2 weeks to record the thing. But, so then you can listen to a snippet, on the way to work or while you're jogging around or whatever. And, or on a road trip or something. You should be able to get it all in there.
Sure you haven't figured out your voice with 11 labs that we could put it to AI,
No,
and it still sounds like Dr. Greger?
One of these days. One of these days. I mean, it's really brutal. My vocal cords are very unhappy.
Well, sure they are after all these interviews for this book, but the point is that your people should be thinking about using 11 labs to take your voice and then just look at
It's very close. Maybe not this book, but I think the next one in like 3 years' time, I think we're going to be there.
Well, you're there now, let me tell you.
All right.
Well, I think for my listeners, for everybody who's still on, having listened to 40 minutes of us, I think you got the point. This is a great cookbook, but it's more than a cookbook. He's allocated some to narrative to let you know what's going on. He's also put in the ingredients that you need in each one of these recipes, which obviously it wouldn't be a cookbook if it didn't have the ingredients in it. He's given you some thoughts here today to think about, especially the one that relates, I think, personally, was around ginger and inflammation and some of the other things that you could take to reduce inflammation. And obviously, that's a key factor as you get older. Um, and I just want to thank you for your dedication to looking at the science behind all of this, for having nutritional facts, which is a free portal that people can go to find out anything they want. They obviously can make a donation. You'd love to have that to go to the nonprofit. But really, I can't wait for the next book in December. And I hope we can have you back on the show again, Dr. Greger, when your voice is not so strained from doing all these interviews. And we'll have a lot more fun then. Does that sound good?
I'd love it. Let's do it.
Okay. Well, thanks for being on Inside Personal Growth. We'll make sure all our listeners hear this and get back to Nutrition Facts. That's NUTRITION facts.org. That's where you want to go. You can learn about this book there. We'll have a link to Amazon so that you can buy this book directly off of Amazon. And as he said, it's in audio book format, although a cookbook in audio format.
Not this one.
Probably-
How Not to Die in
Oh,
December.
How Not to Die.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So this one's not in audio format. I was going to say, you wouldn't want to have this book in audio. You want to look at the pictures.
Right.
So thanks for being on Inside Personal Growth.
Thanks so much for having me. Keep up the great work.
Namaste.